gut, but we do have one of villi. This is where the pulmonary capillary beds have been injected with red dye. And this is to show you that every alveolus has a blood capillary around much of its wall. Everything in red is inside a blood capillary, and yet you can see the alveoli outlined. So it's a way to make the blood capillaries pop out when you're looking at an organ. Okay? I don't test you on this slide. It's called the lung injected slide. It just helps you see something that otherwise you're not seeing. So now I want to move on to lab activity 29. It is separated because it's a different organ system. We've not talked about it yet, but this is the last dry lab before the practicum 4A, and this is going to be on the practicum 4A, which keeps it off of the last practicum. So what we're looking at is a neurovascular bundle. So what would you expect to find in a neurovascular bundle? Nerves and arteries and veins. Okay? They tend to, every organ needs them, so nerves, arteries, and veins run together to an organ, and they're bundled with connective tissue. The nerve got cut out of this one, so we have an artery, which is always the rounder structure, and we have a vein, which is the more collapsed structure. Okay? So we're going to go look at the wall of the artery. I'll be lecturing on this before the practicum, but you won't be tested on the lecture, but you'll be tested on this visual. So in the center, in the lumen, we have a lot of red blood cells. And some white blood cells, the ones with the nuclei. I'm not testing you on those. I'm testing you on the layering of the wall. The first layer that lines the lumen is the tunica interna, otherwise known as the tunica intima. It's a very thin layer. The middle layer is the tunica media, and the outer layer is the tunica externa, which is an adventitia. The tunica externa is fibrous connective tissue, mostly bundled collagen fibers. This is what it looks like at high power, and it's anchoring that blood vessel down to the body wall. So it's like a fire hose that has to be anchored by the fireman because it's under high pressure, and otherwise it'll wig all over in space. So that's the tunica externa. The tunica media is smooth muscle tissue. And so these are smooth muscle fibers, and especially in arteries, there's a mixture of elastic fibers inside this tunica media. So you see some really squiggly, thin lines. Those are elastic fibers in the tunica media. The tunica interna on an artery has an elastic membrane that we'll be talking about. So it tends to be recoiled and snapped up like this. Okay? The lining of the tunica interna, the epithelium, is endothelium. That is simple squamous epithelium on location, lining a blood vessel. And this thick, kind of smeared line is the elastic membrane we'll be talking about in lecture. You don't have to name it right now. Okay? So that's the artery looking at it. Let's go over and look at the vein. And I need to warn you, I don't know that I'm going to have time to show you, that some of the vein slides have captured a valve. Veins have valves, some of them, and the valve is filling the lumen. So if you get one of those slides and need help with it, that's what's going on. I can look at it with you. Just real quickly, we'll go to, we're at low power. Let's stay there. I'm going to point out this wall is not as thick, and so it's a thinner wall than an artery, and it's got a larger lumen. The endothelium, the cells are still simple squamous, but the nuclei have balled up as an artifact of slide preparation. The thickest layer here is the tunica externa, and we'd have to go up to higher power to really see that, but the tunica media is quite thin on this vein. Okay? So in just the last second, let me show you the elastic fibers in your list are most developed in large, what are called conducting arteries that we'll learn about in lecture. And let me just show you how abundant those elastic fibers are. They always stain black, and they're thinner than the collagen. But here, this is tunica media, so this is smooth muscle fibers mixed with elastic fibers. And we don't do the whole wall here. It's not well presented with a consistent epithelium. But you see just how thick the tunica media is and how abundant those fibers are, elastic fibers. Okay? So do study these on PAL-CD. These are on your first practicum 4A. There is an open lab Friday. The open lab is followed by a seminar. The seminar is